Nobody is talking about the 20 hours a week you're silently donating to your employer. No contract, no overtime, no thank you. It's Sunday night, you're lying in bed, and it's not even 9 p.m. yet. The week is technically over. The weekend is technically yours. But something in your chest is already tightening up. Tomorrow is Monday. You check your phone, just once you tell yourself, and there it is. 3 emails from your manager sent at 8:47 p.m. on a Saturday. Not urgent, not critical, just there, sitting in your inbox like a tiny little landlord who never stops collecting rent from your brain. You put the phone down, you try to sleep. But now you're running tomorrow's 9 a.m. meeting in your head. You're mentally drafting a response to that email. You're thinking about the report you left unfinished on Friday afternoon because you were too drained to finish it. You haven't clocked in yet, but you are already working. Now here's the question. Nobody in your HR department will ever ask you, when exactly did your workday start? And more importantly, when does it actually end? Because if you're being brutally honest with yourself, the answer to both of those questions has nothing to do with the hours printed on your contract. My name is Jake, and I've spent the last few years obsessing over a very simple but deeply uncomfortable math problem. The gap between the life your employer pays for and the life you actually give them for free. And what I've found is that for most salaried workers in 2025, that gap is not a rounding error. It's not a minor inconvenience. It's a full second job, unpaid, unacknowledged, and completely invisible on your pay stub. Today, we are going to do a full forensic audit of your actual working hours, not the number your company puts in the contract, the real number, the honest number. And by the time we're done, you're going to understand why the modern 8-hour workday is one of the most successful myths ever sold to the working class, and how it's costing you not just your money, but your life. Let's start with the official story, the one that gets repeated in every job offer, every employment contract, every LinkedIn post celebrating work-life balance. The story goes like this. You work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, 40 hours total. You get paid for those 40 hours. The other 128 hours in the week are yours. That's the deal. That's the agreement. That's what you signed. But here's what no one tells you. The 8-hour workday was never designed to protect your time. It was designed to look like it does. The 8-hour workday was born in the Industrial Revolution, when labor organizers fought brutal, heroic battles to limit factory shifts from 12 and 16 hours down to 8. That was a genuine, hard-won victory. 8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, 8 hours for what you will. It was a radical idea in 1817, and it was beautiful. But something happened between 1817 and right now. The factory walls disappeared. The time card disappeared. The physical separation between work and not work dissolved. And in its place, we got smartphones and Slack and remote work tools that turned every hour of your day into a potential working hour, while your paycheck stayed anchored to a 40-hour ceiling that hasn't moved in a century. We kept the 8-hour contract, but we lost the 8-hour reality. And most of us are so deep inside this system that we can't even see where the unpaid hours begin and the paid ones end. That is what we're going to map today, precisely, with numbers. Let me introduce you to Marcus. Marcus is 34, works in marketing at a mid-sized company, earns a salary of $72,000 a year, which on paper works out to $34.60 an hour. That's a solid number. That's respectable. Marcus has a nice apartment, a reliable car, and a coffee machine he's genuinely proud of. But according to his employment contract, Marcus works 9 to 5, Monday through Friday, 40 hours a week. Standard stuff. Except Marcus doesn't actually work 40 hours a week. Not even close. And before you say, well, he should just set better boundaries, I want to walk you through Marcus's actual day, not the version he tells his parents, but the version that happens in real life, in real time, every single day. Because once you see Marcus's real day, you're going to recognize it. You're going to recognize it very, very well. Marcus's alarm goes off at 6:45 a.m., not because he's a morning person, because he has a 9 a.m. meeting, and his commute takes 45 minutes on a good day, and he needs time to shower, get dressed, make himself look like a functional adult, and stop at the coffee place downstairs, because there's no possible version of him that can run a 9 a.m. meeting without caffeine. By 7:30 a.m., he's already checking Slack. Not because he has to, because the little notification dot makes his brain twitch like a reflex he never trained himself out of. He reads 3 messages, responds to 1, puts his phone down, picks it back up, checks email, puts it down again. His workday, as far as his nervous system is concerned, has already started. The clock on his wall says 7:35 a.m. His contract says 9 a.m. The gap between those two numbers is already 85 minutes of free labor. And he hasn't had breakfast yet. Let's build Marcus's real time sheet. And let's be thorough, because this is where it gets uncomfortable. The pre-work preparation block. Every morning, Marcus spends roughly 45 minutes on activities that exist solely because of his job. Showering to professional standards, ironing clothes, commuting. None of this would exist at its current scale if Marcus didn't have a 9 a.m. commitment 5 days a week. That's 45 minutes minimum. Call it 3.75 hours a week. The commute. Marcus drives 35 minutes each way. That's 70 minutes of travel per day. On the train, in traffic, burning fuel, consuming time. His contract does not mention this. His paycheck does not reflect this. But his body, his gas tank, and his evening are all depleted by it. 5 days a week, 5.8 hours. Gone. The captive lunch. Hour. Marcus technically gets an hour for lunch, but he can't go home. He can't nap on his couch, take his dog for a long walk, do his laundry, have a proper meal, or do anything that he would actually do if he had a free hour. He is geographically and socially held captive by the office. He eats at his desk half the time. He talks about work during lunch most of the time. This is not a free hour. This is a held hour. Let's give it partial credit and say half his lunch hour, 30 minutes a day, is effectively work time. That's 2.5 hours a week, the post-work decompression block. Marcus gets home at 6:15 p.m. He cannot immediately be a functioning human being. He needs 30 to 45 minutes of what I call re-entry time, the period where he sits on the couch staring at nothing, or scrolls his phone or snaps at his partner about something unrelated to what's actually bothering him. This decompression is not leisure. It is recovery from work. It is the biological cost of having spent 9 hours in a high-stimulation, performance-oriented environment. His brain is paying a debt that the job created. 30 minutes a day, 2.5 hours a week. The evening tether. This is the brutal one. After dinner, Marcus checks his email. He doesn't want to. He knows he shouldn't. But somewhere in the back of his head, a voice says, what if something urgent came in? What if his manager is expecting a response? What if he looks slow or disengaged if he doesn't reply tonight? So he checks. He responds to 2 things. He reads 4 more. He puts the phone down. He picks it back up at 10 p.m. and then again at 11. His body is at home. His mind is still at the office. Conservatively, 45 minutes of cognitive work per evening. That's 3.75 hours a week, the weekend leak. Saturday morning, Marcus's phone buzzes. Just a quick check, he thinks. One email turns into 5. A Slack message from his boss asking if the deck for Monday is looking good forces him to open his laptop and spend 90 minutes on something that was supposed to be done on Friday. He also spends roughly 30 minutes on Sunday doing what I call anxiety prep work, reviewing the IE week's agenda, thinking through potential problems, mentally rehearsing conversations. That's about 2 hours a week leaking out of his weekend. Marcus's real weekly hours committed to work. Contracted hours, 40.0 pre-work prep, plus 3.75. Commute, plus 5.8. Captive lunch, plus 2.5. Decompression, plus 2.5. Evening tether, plus 3.75. Weekend leak, plus 2.0. Total, 60.3 hours per week. Marcus thinks he works 40 hours a week. He is being paid for 40 hours a week. He is actually giving 60 hours a week to his employer, 20 of which are completely free. That's a 50% labor premium that he is donating every single week without ever being asked and without ever being thanked. But Jake, those aren't real working hours. Some of those are just life. That's exactly the trap I want you to notice. We've been trained to accept the bleed as normal. The commute feels like life because you're the one driving. The decompression feels like rest because you're sitting on your couch. The Sunday anxiety feels like a personal failing because nobody told you it was a business cost. But all of it, every minute of it, exists because of the job. Now let's do the second layer of the audit. Because it's not just your time they're getting for free. Your employer is also extracting real measurable dollars from your pocket, costs that wouldn't exist if you didn't have the job, and costs that never appear on any job description. Transportation. Marcus spends roughly $280 a month on gas, parking, and vehicle wear and tear attributed to his commute. That's $3,360 a year. A significant portion of his car, its insurance, its maintenance, its depreciation, exists purely to transport him to a building where he makes money. The car is a tool of the job. The job doesn't pay for it. Professional appearance. Marcus has to dress in a way that would not be his natural default. Business casual is not free. Dry cleaning is not free. The haircut he gets every 3 weeks instead of every 6 because he can't show up looking unkempt to a client meeting. That's a job cost. Conservatively, $150 a month, $1,800 a year. The convenience tax. Because Marcus leaves early and comes home late and exhausted, he orders delivery food 3 times a week. He buys lunch at work twice a week instead of bringing it from home. He pays for the expensive coffee because he needs it to function. He pays for the gym membership he barely uses but desperately needs to offset the damage of sitting at a desk all day. This convenience tax, the premium he pays to survive a schedule that isn't naturally sustainable, adds up to about $400 a month. $4,800 a year. The decompression budget. This is the spending category that nobody budgets for, but everyone has. It's the Friday night bar tab that's a bit larger than it needs to be because Marcus genuinely needs to take the edge off the week. It's the weekend trip he books impulsively because he just needs to not be in his city for 48 hours. It's the online shopping habit that spikes after particularly brutal weeks. It's the therapy. And look, therapy is valuable and important, but Part of what Marcus is paying his therapist for is to help him deal with a job-induced stress load that he didn't have before he started. Conservative estimate, $300 a month, $3,600 a year. Annual job costs, money out-of-pocket transportation, $3,360. Appearance, $1,800. Convenience tax, $4,800. Decompression, $3,600. Total job costs, $13,560 per year. Now subtract that from Marcus's take-home pay. After federal and state taxes, Marcus takes home roughly $53,000 from his $72,000 salary. Subtract $13,560 in job costs, and his real net income from employment is $39,440. He thought he was making $72,000. He's actually keeping $39,440, and he's doing it in 60-plus hours a week instead of 40. Marcus's real hourly wage, real net income, $39,440, real annual hours, 60.3 hours per week, times 50 weeks equals 3,015 hours. $39,440 divided by 3,015 equals $13.08 per hour. Marcus thought he was earning $34.60 an hour. He's actually earning $13.08 an hour. A 62% reduction, almost two-thirds of his perceived wage, gone. And $13.08 is not even the floor. If Marcus lives in a high cost of living city, if his commute is longer, if his stress spending is heavier, if his job requires more visible professional investment, the real number could easily be under $10, under $8. In some scenarios, depending on the specific parameters of the job and the city and the lifestyle it forces you into, you can be a salaried professional making less per effective hour than the kid delivering your dinner. The delivery kid clocks out. Marcus never does. I want to take this one step further because the wage calculation is just the beginning of the problem. There's a second dimension to this that's even more disturbing, and it has nothing to do with money. It has to do with attention. Your attention is the most valuable non-renewable resource you have. More than money, more than time in the abstract, because time is actually just the container for attention. An hour where your mind is somewhere else is not really your hour. And what I've just described, the pre-work anxiety, the morning Slack checking, the evening tether, the Sunday dread, all of that is not just stolen time. It's stolen attention. It's the best, clearest, most creative parts of your cognitive bandwidth being quietly rerouted to someone else's priorities. Think about the last time you had a genuinely original idea, not at work, not a solution to a work problem. A real idea is something creative, something personal, something that was yours. When did that happen? My guess is it happened in a moment of genuine rest, a shower, a long walk, a lazy Sunday morning before you checked your phone. The tethered mind cannot have those moments because the tethered mind is always partially at the office. It's always running background processes for the job, even when the body is at the park or at dinner or trying to fall asleep. You are not just working for free during those 20 extra hours. You are spending those hours in a state that prevents the rest, the creativity, and the presence that make life actually worth living. You are not just losing money, you are losing yourself. And the most quietly devastating part of all of this, the company doesn't need you to agree to it. They just need you to not notice it. They don't put the evening emails in your contract. They don't mention the Sunday anxiety in the offer letter. They don't call it labor. They call it culture. They call it passion. They call it being a team player. And because it doesn't have a name, because it doesn't show up on any time card, because nobody ever explicitly asks you for it, you give it freely every week without even realizing what you're giving. That $5 coffee you grab every morning because you're too deep in work mode to make your own? Over 30 years, invested at 7%, that single daily habit is worth over $180,000. You're not just buying coffee. You're buying a quiet kind of captivity, one sip at a time. That $300 you spend every month numbing the stress of your job, over 20 years, that's the down payment on a house. You're not decompressing. You're paying rent to a prison you built yourself and call your career. I know what some of you are thinking right now. You're thinking, Jake, this is all well and good, but I have rent, I have student loans, I have a kid in daycare and a car payment, and I can't just opt out of the modern economy because some guy on the internet did some depressing math. I hear you, and I'm not telling you to quit your job and go live off the grid. That's not the point. The point is not to make you feel trapped. The point is to make you see the trap clearly enough to start disassembling it piece by piece from the inside. Because here's the thing. Once you can see the invisible hours, you can start negotiating for them. Once you can name the leaked attention, you can start building walls around it. Once you know your real hourly wage, not the fantasy number on your offer letter, but the actual number you're earning per actual hour of your life, everything changes. Your relationship with money changes. Your relationship with time changes. Your tolerance for pointless meetings and performative busyness changes entirely. You become the CFO of your own life, and the first job of any good CFO is to stop the bleeding. First, calculate your real number. Do the math I walked you through today for your own life. Be honest. Be brutal. Don't exclude things because they're uncomfortable to count. What is your actual take-home after taxes? What are your actual job-related expenses? Transportation, appearance, convenience, decompression. What are your actual hours committed to work, including the morning preparation, the commute, the post-work recovery, the evening phone checking, the weekend anxiety? Divide the first number by the second. That is your real hourly wage. Write it down. Put it somewhere you can see it. Second, identify your biggest time leaks. For most people, it's the evening tether and the weekend bleed. Start there. Make a rule, not a vague intention, a hard rule, about when work, communication stops. Not because you're lazy, because you are running a business, and in any healthy business, there are operating hours. Outside those hours, the business is closed. You are allowed to close. Third, attack the convenience tax. This one is purely financial and entirely within your control. Meal prep one day a week, and you eliminate 4 or 5 delivery orders. Brew your coffee at home, and you eliminate a daily expense that, as we just calculated, is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars in lifetime compound interest. Every dollar you remove from the cost of working column is a dollar that goes directly into your real hourly wage. You are giving yourself a raise without asking anyone's permission. Fourth, negotiate your physical presence. If you can work from home 2 or 3 days a week, your commute cost and time drops dramatically. You gain hours. You gain money. You gain the psychological freedom of not having to perform professionalism in a physical space for entire days at a time. This is not laziness. This is margin optimization. Every 30-minute commute you eliminate is an hour of your life returned to you per day. That's 20 hours a month, 240 hours a year, 10 full days of your life handed back to you for free. Fifth, and most importantly, redefine what success looks like. We've been told our entire adult lives that the goal is income. Get the raise, hit the six figures, move up the ladder. But income without margin is not success. It is a more expensive version of the same trap. The goal is not to earn more. The goal is to keep more money, more time, more attention, more presence. The goal is margin, the gap between what you earn and what you spend, multiplied by the gap between the hours you're paid for and the hours you actually give. That gap is where your actual life happens. A person who earns $50,000 a year, works 40 real hours, and keeps $30,000 of it, is richer in every meaningful way than a person who earns $120,000, works 65 real hours, and keeps $35,000 of it while slowly losing their health, their relationships, and their sense of self. 10. Philosophical close. We are living in an economy that has figured out something very clever. It figured out that if you pay people enough to feel like they're doing well, they will voluntarily donate enormous amounts of time, energy, and attention on top of what they're paid for. They'll check their email at 11 p.m. and call it being responsible. They'll skip their lunch break and call it being productive. They'll give up their Sundays and call it dedication. And they'll do all of this freely, gratefully even, because they've been told that the job is the point, that the salary is the goal, and they've never once been handed a calculator and told to check. The people who have figured this out, the ones who are genuinely winning this game, they don't work harder. They work with clarity. They know their number. They know what an hour of their life is actually worth, and they spend and give those hours accordingly. They set limits, not because they're cynical about work, but because they respect their own time enough to price it correctly. The people who haven't figured it out yet are still running the numbers in their heads that their employer put there. 40 hours a week, a solid salary, a good deal. But as we've seen today, the deal is only good for one side of the table. So here's what I want you to do this week, not this month, not someday. This week, run your numbers, calculate your real hourly wage, write it on a sticky note, put it on your laptop, and the next time you feel guilty for not responding to a 9 p.m. Slack message, or the next time you're debating whether to take a long lunch and actually breathe for an hour, look at that number. Ask yourself, have I been paid for this hour? If the answer is no, the next move is yours to make. The 8-hour workday is a myth, but the 8-hour life, a life with genuine boundaries, genuine rest, and genuine presence outside of work, that's real. It's available to you. It just requires you to stop accepting a contract you never read. If this video hit close to home, share it with one person who you think is giving too much away for free. We don't fix this alone, but we can start by seeing it clearly together. I'll see you in the next one.